Yeah, so everybody, I'd just like to introduce myself. I'll be asking some questions to Manu today. I'm a Santa Cruz resident, born and raised here in town. Currently on Vine Hill Road, grew up in SoCal, and I host a podcast called Our Future, where I interview a lot of visionary business leaders and people with some big ideas. And Manu is no exception to that. He has a lot of great ideas about the future of local politics, of cities, of technology, of innovation. And whenever I've talked to Manu, I've always been so impressed with the intelligence and the rationality he brings to issues as they relate to community and especially at the local level. So I just love it if Manu wants to come out and introduce himself beyond what I can say. And Manu, thank you for being here and here to address questions and be in this Q&A.
Yeah, Michael, my pleasure. Thank you for hosting this, and thank you, Doug, also for bringing us together. And I think we're all here tonight because we care deeply about the Santa Cruz community and really understand the creative potential of this community. If you're involved in the Santa Cruz tech scene, you know that it's distinctly different from Silicon Valley. We're much more connected with creating businesses that matter, that are going to change the world for the better, rather than just trying to make a buck. So you also probably know that we face a lot of challenges with starting companies here in Santa Cruz, and that you may or may not realize that the best way to overcome some of those challenges, that we need to be politically active. And that's ultimately going to be, right now it's really limiting the ability of Santa Cruz tech companies to flourish. And this is something that we can do. Being politically active, and particularly the supervisor's race, is a way to really improve the local tech scene here in Santa Cruz, which will have great repercussions for ultimately, I think, the whole world. I'll just introduce myself a little bit and talk about some of the core elements of my platform, and then we want to save plenty of time for you guys to ask questions. The hope is that you can walk away here from here tonight having a real clear sense of what this race is about and what it is we can do in our community through the supervisor position that'll make a big difference. So with that, I'll just share my screen here and give you a quick few slides. And here we go. Great. So what you should know about me is I was born here in Santa Cruz. This is a picture of me and my dad at the Santa Boardwalk Carousel. And I've moved away many times, but come back because my family is here. My grandparents live near 25th Avenue, and my parents live in Corralitos. My fiance, Leah, and I live over by the East Cliff Shopping Center. Leah is a registered nurse and also a member of the Medical Reserve Corps. People always ask me where my name comes from. It's my first name, last name. Manu is my first name, and it means bird in Hawaiian. And I have, my mom's family is from the islands, Tahiti and Hawaii. And this means that early on, I saw sudden coral reef death happening. And it really inspired me to get into public policy, to be able to do something about these issues. And I'm a strong believer that we have a real shot of making a difference here in Santa Cruz that will impact the health of our oceans and the whole world. Now, if you would have asked me 10 years ago what I wanted to be, it certainly was not politician. Politician would be at the bottom of my list. I originally saw the best way to go about improving public policy being through tech. And I co-founded an app called Civinomics. This is a picture of us at the launch at Cruise.io Works. And the idea was that people could propose new policy and vote online. Thought, let's just go around the broken system. What we found was that unless we had an elected representative in office that was willing to take the suggestions of citizens, take good ideas that were popular, and put them into action, nothing would happen. So, despite the fanfare, ultimately, we realized we would have to pivot. Now, I should also say that during that time, we worked with all of the city governments, the city of Santa Cruz, Watsonville, Scotts Valley, Capitola, the county of Santa Cruz itself, and they paid us good money to do polling and survey research. This is a picture of me at the Watsonville Farmers Market talking to people about economic development. And even then, even when they were paying taxpayer money to collect public input. Oftentimes, all that would happen is they'd check the box and put the report on a shelf and nothing would happen. So I got increasingly into activism and really centered in on the Greenway issue, right? The rail corridor should be trail or train. And I was advocating for a trail only, or really sort of a trail squared position with Greenway. We collected over 10,000 signatures of support, all from registered voters. We verified each one of those voters, and still we were ignored by elected representatives. Chief among them, my opponent, John Leopold, in the supervisor of the 1st District. So after that effort was ignored, we went on and passed a ballot initiative in the city of Capitola, saying that the Capitola trestle should be used for trail, not a train. We got one more vote on the Regional Transportation Commission, but still the policy wasn't getting changed. And so that's when I realized I would have to run for office myself to hold other electeds accountable and ultimately make a difference implementing a Greenway type policy, and also really setting the stage for a lot more good work in our community. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about Santa Cruz Tech real quickly here. High-paying jobs are really on the top list of what people want in our community. This is a recent poll by Santa Cruz Local, great local journalism, and they interviewed over 430 people, and high-paying jobs was right there in the top 5. And what we need for a good tech ecosystem, many of these things are community-based, about half of them or more, but some things really require the cooperation and a champion in local government. And so, for example, things like co-working and accelerator maker spaces. If we're going to create more of those places in the county, we need really to address some of our zoning laws. And if we're going to have lots of engineers, we need places for them to live. And if we are going to have really fast internet, then we need county public works on board, putting in conduit under major thoroughfares so that we can get fiber internet in more places in the county. So the 1st District is right in the middle of the county. It kind of goes from 7th Avenue on one side to Wharf Road on the other, on the highway side. And then it goes all the way from Highway 17 to the edge of Capitola north, and all the way up to the summit. But it's an important district because it really has some of the key opportunity zones in our county. So for example, these little red dots here are sort of places that in the Sustainable Santa Cruz plan are highlighted as new workforce centers for local employment and really key elements for a walkable community. So one of them, for example, is right here on 41st in SoCal. There's the SoCal Research Park there, great site that could be developed for more co-working spaces and other office space for new startups. My opponent voted to put a car dealership right at the corner of that area, a place that is very low employment per capita and for the revenue that it brings in. So it was in contradiction to this plan, and is a reason why we need better representation, people who understand that the future of our county is going to require good, high-paying jobs, and that we need to create the infrastructure for that. I mentioned housing. There's the 3 elements of my housing agenda are legalize tiny homes on wheels, update building code to build more affordable units, and streamline the planning department. I really believe that we're not going to build a bunch of government-funded housing to create affordable housing. We need to make it easier for everyone in our community to add supply. So tiny homes, are an obvious and easy place to start. Santa Clara just legalized them, and we could easily adopt the same regulations here. Updating the building code, a big limiting factor today is that we require 2 parking spaces with every new, even studio apartment in the county, and that leads to some really bad land use decisions where new construction In some cases, 2/3 of the land area is going to parking and only 1/3 is going to building. We really need to change that. Finally, there's very little accountability with our county planning department. So good projects can be, in the third round of your review, people can get word back that, oh yeah, by the way, you're gonna have to keep an existing structure that's there on the lot. And yeah, so now you're gonna need 3 units less than you were going to. And now all of a sudden the project doesn't pencil out and we might not get any housing at all instead of, 10, 20 units. So we really need to make the county planning department accountable, and I have a number of strategies for that, which I'm happy to go into more detail.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can stop there, and if you want to jump into some questions.
Absolutely. Manu, so these fires are such an omnipresent theme in our lives now. When we go outside, we're smelling them, we're breathing them. But the way you've talked about this situation, you've kind of talked about it in context of a silver lining. How can we use this situation to better processes for rebuilding homes that were destroyed by fires? You also mentioned some stats about how Santa Cruz has the most residents in high fire risk areas than any other county or comparable counties. So kind of how are you viewing the situation, and how can we shore up against the increasing risk of fires as climate change really takes hold of our planet?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we have more residents living in the wildland urban interface. That's the highest risk area for wildfire of any other county in the state. So it's really one of the most important issues in our county. So, and as you said as well, there is a silver lining here in that as we help more than 900 homeowners rebuild, we've got to streamline the planning department. It's no longer a nice to have. It's something that we absolutely have to do. And hopefully, as we develop that process, what we can do is and get through the 900 applications for rebuild permits, we can make that then the new normal for everyone else who's coming behind, and that we can actually make a better process for them as well. You ideally use the same process to add new housing capacity. I guess the short answer here is I really think we can take. We have a lot of unmanaged space in the county where the county's not even controlling brush and fuel in its own right of ways. And this was really called out in the civil grand jury report that came out in July of this year, that basically said our county leadership doesn't know where the problem areas are, is not putting together an effective plan for dealing with excessive risks, and it's basically therefore can't keep us safe. So we need to look for ways to get new resources on the problem. You might have also heard that during these fires, because we were down by half in terms of convict teams clearing fire breaks, and they traditionally do a lot of work helping with fires here in California. So our state will traditionally field about 193 convict teams to deal with fire, and we were down, like I said, by half. So what we can do in the future is look to maybe the homeless population to help with this, right? We're housing a lot more people, and we know from local programs like the Homeless Garden Project and the Downtown Streets team that employment is one of the key factors in helping people put their lives back together and find new and healthy habits and develop a sense of goals. I even heard from a former meth addict who had gone to San Quentin and then gone on to into the Cal Fire system as through one of these fire camp programs they're called, and going from someone who was described as a menace to society to someone who saved a small town from fire and was being called a hero, radically changed his sense of self. So we can look to something that seems like a problem now and turn it into an opportunity going forward.
I love that mentality, looking at it as an opportunity to have a silver lining in it. But really, the focus of this discussion is about technology and innovation in Santa Cruz. And Santa Cruz has seen some amazing innovation, whether it be that Netflix was founded here, Seagate, and there's so many exciting companies, then and now. But Santa Cruz always kind of had this mentality of being a little bit afraid of the commercial, being a little bit afraid of business expansion. Why do you think that mentality isn't isn't right for Santa Cruz's current future?
Well, you have to understand the context of that. The previous generation has fought and won a lot of really important battles around environmental stewardship, right? It's thanks to them that we don't have a 4-lane highway going through the Pogonip. It's thanks to them that there's not a giant conference center at Lighthouse Field, and there's not subdivisions going up all the way to the North Coast. Those were important battles to fight and win. And now we've got a great green belt. And I think what's we've also seen in those intervening years, I mean, you've mentioned Netflix, we've sequenced the human genome here. Santa Cruz has a unique creative community that, as I said, is really very focused on meaningful innovations. Things like cruise foam, creating an alternative to styrofoam. There's even like all the organic food movement that's come out of Santa Cruz. So I think that in fostering Santa Cruz innovators, we're really going to be fostering technologies and companies that can have a really meaningful impact the world over. And so it's important to nurture this local culture.
Yeah, and speaking of cruise foam, we actually have a cruise foam board member, Toby Corey, who is an incredible Santa Cruz entrepreneur, investor, innovator, who does live in the First District. So Toby, if you are plugged in right now, it would be awesome to hear a quick pitch.
I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can. Give us a 1-minute pitch on cruise foam.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to give you real quick before that. So I am 100% behind Manu's candidacy. For all the reasons that he's laid out, he's the right guy at the right time for the right job that can really address and get Santa Cruz in a whole different track. So I'm super excited to be on this call. Cruise foam. 2 scientists from UC Santa Cruz started, one of them actually is the department chair for the Baskin Engineering School, Marco Orlandi. John Feltz was his PhD student. They had been working with this really exciting material that's been around for quite some time and harvested a massive commodity called chitin. And John, as a material scientist, they started working and like, hey, I think we can simulate polyurethane and styrofoam. Styrofoam takes 400 to 500 years to degrade in any landfill. They started working with this product. We're working with some incredible customers, Ford Motor Company and Estee Lauder and a number of other Fortune 500 businesses and pilot projects, and it's looking very, very promising. So the material can completely get rid of all styrofoam. Packaging is the largest industry, it's a $40 billion industry. This product literally begins to degrade in your own garden in 4 or 5 months instead of 400 to 500 years. So exciting company on a rocket ship right here in Santa Cruz.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Toby.
Very cool.
Kind of drawing off that, I mean, Cruise Foam is one example of a super awesome company. We have so many more, whether it be Supply Shift or, all the, the startup Sandbox with creating a bioscience hub in Santa Cruz, which is really exciting. What are some issues, Manu, you think that businesses and startups in Santa Cruz might face when they're, trying to expand, and how might you try to alleviate those pressures?
Yeah, well, the one that I've heard most often is just we don't have enough office space. And shortly after that is that it's really expensive for housing here, and it's hard to get employees to either move here or to be able to afford to invest and buy a home here. So just so happens those are the 2 biggest things that I can impact as your county supervisor, and I talked a little bit about that in terms of updating some of the zoning. We can really just create a lot more flexibility for how our land is used overall. So I'll give you one quick example. Today, the county has a 50-50 requirement for mixed use projects, which says they have to be 50% commercial, 50% residential. We should just get rid of something like that and allow natural communities to form that need to be, whatever mix they need to be.
Absolutely. So diving further into the topic of innovation, Manu, for years now, you've championed the rail trail, which is a really innovative concept, wherein we'll see micromobility kind of take hold more in Santa Cruz, wherein from Davenport to Watsonville, it can be bikes and scooters, alleviating traffic on Highway 1. It is really innovative idea that you've been behind for some time now. I'd love if you could touch on that and kind of outline your vision for the rail trail, because I love it.
Sure, yeah, and it's not just my vision. I think it's an idea a lot of folks in our community have worked really hard on. And I think the distinction that needs to be made is there's the original plan, which is the rail and trail, and then there's the alternative, which is a greenway or really a wide multi-use trail. And the problem with the train is it just really limits the ability to put in a trail. The small section that's been built on the west side has come in at $8 million. For 1.3 miles, making it one of the most expensive trails ever built in the country. So I think that those of us in the tech community realize that micromobility is a massive trend, that we have got local entrepreneurs working on this, like One Wheel, until recently Inboard. And Santa Cruz was actually second only to San Francisco in terms of use of jump bikes. So we had, I think it was 5 or 6 rides per day per jump bike, making it one of the, again, most active zones anywhere. So facilitating both local companies, our tourism culture, and just overall ethic of being outdoors and supporting the environment, it really all comes together with a bike thoroughfare through our community, where you could hop on an Aptos and be on the west side without having to stop once in 15-20 minutes on your bike or e-bike.
And is the rail trail a more temporary solution, or are you thinking about, I think you discussed perhaps a light rail system, or a train in the future, if you were to be elected?
Personally, I oppose the light rail plan. It's just too expensive. In the way that technology is going, we don't have enough space in the corridor. I think that any sort of large scale solution like that we need to look to the highway and optimizing the highway. Whole other discussion. But yeah, I think that the best use of the old rail corridor would be to rail bank it and have a wide multi-use trail that we can sort of reprogram as needed for the technology of the day.
Sure. And we're talking a lot about tech and innovation, but at the same time, an employee at Looker might walk out of the office. There'll be someone, sleeping on the street, in downtown Santa Cruz, and homelessness is obviously one of the biggest issues that you're addressing in your campaign. You mentioned briefly that we could, that there could be work programs implemented that you're behind. What other avenues and strategies do you see that could be implemented to alleviate the homelessness crisis in Santa Cruz?
Yeah, homelessness is really shocking and visible in our community. I have seen it a lot working out of the Cruise IO space downtown. My dad recently moved back to work in our community after having worked in Silicon Valley for many years, and is just shocked by the sort of unmitigated disaster homelessness seems to be today. I just want to share this one image with you guys real quick, because I think it nicely summarizes my plan for dealing with homelessness. First, I'll say, homelessness is the county's problem. There's a reason why we keep organizing these the camp next to the county building. It's because people looking out their windows of the county building should be doing something about this issue. The county receives all the money from the state and the federal government for health and human services and for addressing homelessness. It's not the city of Santa Cruz's problem. And there are a number of strategies here. I think we really need to look at a new holistic system for dealing with homelessness. So strategy 1 would be empowering all of you to be able to pick up your phone and say, hey, there's a guy who, I'm at the O'Neill store downtown, and this guy just walked in, and he's yelling at people, he's pulling stuff off the shelves. I think he needs some help. And we could send out a mental health crisis group, maybe either in conjunction with an officer or separate. They might sometimes, just without an officer, they can be more effective at dealing with people who are suffering from mental health issue or addiction issues. So that's strategy 1. And I should say that's based on the Cahoots program in Eugene, Oregon. There's also a similar program they've launched in San Luis Obispo. So it does have proven results. Strategy 2 would be to expand treatment services at the Emmeline Health Clinic, because we actually can get much higher Medicare reimbursement rates from people it's treated at county facilities than at like the Dominican ER. And it also helps relieve pressure on the Dominican ER, which currently 30% of homeless people cite as their #1 source for medical care. So that's a problem. And then step 3 is building tiny house villages on county property. I mean, heck, we can even start at Emmeline, but there's the Watsonville Health Clinic is owned by the county. There's probably easily another 100 parcels throughout our county that are publicly owned and could be a great spot for new housing. And then strategy 4, we really need established and unified governance to track these metrics on how we're doing and bring people together and improve.
Definitely, yeah. It's an important point you raised about Dominican, because there's so many homeless people coming in and out of Dominican, taking up hospital space and just causing, huge amounts of cost. So I really like the idea to go in all in on Emmeline for sure. So Manu, before we open this up for Q&A, for the participants of the Q&A, could you just tell us how, when people see that ballot come through for, when they see county supervisor, they often just check the box for the same guy who's been in there for years and years. There's no term limits, but I feel like people don't fully understand how powerful a county, like the county supervisor is. Mm-hmm. And you've described it with some cool analogies that you relate to the federal government. So, you would be in charge of an $850 million budget, and it's a crazy job. So I'd love to hear about how you think about it.
Yeah, $870 million this year. So I think the way to think about a county supervisor is it's like the executive branch, the president and Congress, the House and Senate, wrapped together and then divided into 5 people. So those are your 5 supervisors, and they have executive powers. They approve or disapprove every line item on the county's budget. And they're the only people in our county that can really approve or propose new laws. They can even put things on the ballot. I mean, of course, there's the initiative process for citizens to approve new laws, and you need 10,000 signatures for that to get something on the ballot. County supervisors could also directly propose something to the citizens to vote on, just with a 3 out of 5 vote. The other thing that they do is they really act as the de facto representative, the only point of accountability for all the unincorporated areas of the county. So if you live in Pleasure Point, for example, you're outside of the city boundaries and you don't have a city council to go to. So the only person you can call up is your county supervisor, and they kind of will make sure that things are getting done in your district. So very important role, absolutely. And you should care very much about who your supervisor is and that they're bringing new and an innovative approach to the table.
Well, that's certainly you, Manu, bringing an innovative approach. I'd love to open it up to Q&A. I think just the size of this meeting is perfect to like get to know Manu, come out and ask questions about the issues that you care about the most. But yeah, that was really just a roadmap with some big topics to really get to know Manu's stances. And if you have more specific topics you'd like to bring up, go ahead and fire.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, hi, Shiv.
Oh, hi. Manu, one of the things that I didn't hear was, what your plan for schools and or education is. Obviously, we have a great, institution at, Cabrillo, but, sort of in the younger grades, often when we've talked about relocating some of our facilities closer to, let's say, Scotts Valley, so it's a reverse commute, and we can try and attract talent here, and we looked at the possibility of creating some businesses here, and always get the response from people who live over the hill as the schools aren't up to scratch, right? So when we compare against some of the the areas, even like Los Gatos, I know Cupertino, Los Altos, Saratoga, etc. They're attracted to Santa Cruz for the quality of life and are willing to come over if they don't have kids. But the moment there's kids involved, I get looked at as if I'm an alien. So I want to know what your proposals to help our schools would be to make Santa Cruz a world-class sort of educational attraction, because it isn't today.
Yeah, that's a great it's a good point. You're absolutely right. Our schools are not up to snuff. My fiance reminds me of this all the time. It was her biggest When I convinced her to move up here from Monterey, that was her biggest complaint was, well, but what about the schools? I've also worked at Paystand in Scotts Valley, and so I know what you're talking about, and that if you're up there, it's easier to attract people commuting over the hill. So to address your question, county supervisors don't have direct jurisdiction over schools. There is actually a county superintendent of schools, and those budget elements actually go through the County Office of Education. They get their funding through the state. So not as much direct control over schools themselves. But I think the biggest area where I guess there's two things. One, as I mentioned, our county is responsible for health and human services, and mental health services are a big need in schools today. And so through the county, I can make sure that our kids have the mental health services that they need. I can also ensure that kids can get safely to school. So with more protected bike lanes, you may know San Jose put in 10 miles of protected bike lanes in 1 year for $1.5 million. With a quick build program, I'll bring that here and focus on schools so that kids can safely get to schools. And the other thing is, I hate to bring it back to just the planning department, but we've really taken sort of an adversarial approach with people trying to invest in our community. And I think if the county changes to one of cultivating investment in the community and helping more people move here, that's ultimately really going to impact the budget that we have for schools. Most people don't realize that only 13 cents of your property tax dollar goes to the county, and about half of it goes to schools. So if as your supervisor, I can actually cultivate more property taxes through better investment in our county, that's probably going to have the biggest direct impact on schools. I'm open to any other suggestions as well, but yeah, I agree with you. It's really important we have great schools here for people who are starting families here.
Thanks.
Sure. I see a question from Doug Erickson.
Hey, Manu. Seems like every couple of years the RTC spends a couple $1 million with consulting agencies and tries to justify a need for steel wheels and diesel in the town, running through a quarter. And they finally recently changed, looks like they've listened to some of those consultants who have said, it just ain't possible, don't even try. They're finally starting to listen, but now they're switching over to, okay, so maybe we should do what Greenway's been recommending, a greener approach, maybe a light rail, electric light rail, which is like 2 times the cost of, and
right.
We don't have. What is a better way that you would spend all these consulting fees, all our taxpayer money that's going into consulting?
The short answer, Doug, is we should spend more on infrastructure and less on consultant fees. And really, I take everything I've learned working for 4 different tech companies in my thinking on this. We need to just create the minimum viable product. Let's build the simplest trail we can, because there's all kinds of problems that we haven't even thought about yet that we're going to really realize are serious once we put in just even a crushed decomposed granite kind of crushed gravel trail. Start there if we have to. Once we put that in, we're going to realize, oh well, geez, maybe we need lights so that shady stuff's not happening on this trail. Oh gosh, what about the bathrooms? We never planned those, right? Oh my gosh, so many people are using this trail that now the intersections are becoming really dangerous. People are flying through Seabride Avenue or 41st. So I think we can iterate on what we build and solve those issues. And that's a big reason why I'm a fan of a trail rather than a train, is that, for example, with those intersections, if we are designing for a smaller vehicle type, even if it's a small electric bus, it could be easier to put a tunnel under those major intersections and really get the thoroughfare that ultimately is going to be the best.
Gotta get Elon Musk to come with the Boring Company for a little
Yeah.
tunnel action.
That would be helpful.
Well, I mean, if we didn't have the Boring Company, because that causes a lot of, digging, what about doing something totally radical, like supporting a single dedicated lane for autonomous traffic? I mean, we've already got, our tech companies doing stuff, like Uber and Google, Waymo mainly, doing, rides and drives that seem to be working quite well in Phoenix in existing neighborhoods. What about just going totally bold and trying to push for, a real autonomous corridor where, let's say, because this is going back to Highway 1. I mean, I just don't see how it could possibly ever be fixed. There just isn't enough land there. So how do we take, a different solution? So, okay, we take one lane and make it fully autonomous, and then we can run traffic up. You can run autonomous vehicles there at much higher speed. For example, I'm just saying something different that we could implement here in Santa Cruz, because, we're just, we have the people, we have the ideas.
I gotta laugh at that. Shiv, that was proposed a couple years ago, many times in some of these RTC meetings. And I think one of the responses, I won't say who, was, well, those are all fine and dandy, but we just don't believe in those Back to the Future hoverboard solutions. That's what we're dealing with here.
There's been a lot of skepticism. I mean, a refusal to acknowledge that the world is changing by our current representatives. But Shiv, I really like that idea. I think I've actually proposed something similar myself. And I agree that the solution to the highway looks something like that. I also really like the fast track lanes that have gone in much of the Bay Area, because ultimately the problem with traffic today is that, well, there's it's free. It's free to jump on the road. And if you had a grocery store where groceries were free, you'd have a line around the block and the shelves would be empty. And that's pretty much what's going on the highway today. The jam-packed traffic we're paying for it in terms of really poor service. So a fast track lane would do all kinds of great things. It would basically give us a feedback loop. The price could go up and down based on the time of the day. It would incentivize people to carpool. We could use the revenues generated, first of all, to build better capacity for the highway. All of the overpasses need to be redone in order to utilize the space in the middle of the highway. And then once those are redone, you could put in a zipper lane. Heck, you could maybe even make it 2 new lanes worth of capacity, if that, and if you could move the zipper 2 lanes. You might have seen this on the Golden Gate Bridge. And yeah, you could absolutely make it so that one was dedicated to autonomous vehicles, because they can move the fastest. I think that thinking is exactly in line with what we need to do.
Hi, Manu.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi. So given what we're living through right now, and Doug touched on the very unique attitudes that our Santa Cruz community has, it's what drew me here, and the alternative kind of attitudes and lifestyles and beliefs. So I was wondering how you would address attitudes towards vaccinations. I know that my own feeling is that kind of education and that counter education needs to be ongoing right away. We're looking at dealing with a vaccination for COVID, several boosters over a year possibly, and for years to come. And on top of that, having people protect from flu and things like that seasonally. So out of a lot of communities in the Bay Area, I feel like Santa Cruz might be heavily influenced by the kind of counter campaign. And I was wondering how you might address that.
Yeah, great. It's true, Catherine. We have one of the highest rates of unvaccinated people and children in our community. And my fiance is a registered nurse, and so we talk about vaccines a lot. I think that with COVID, we're going to see a vaccine come out here in the next month to 2 months. But of course, that vaccine should not be required. It's been moved through the through the testing process very rapidly. But I do think it's going to start to shift the conversation locally to one of, or actually not just locally, but throughout the state and the country, of addressing COVID as a matter of personal responsibility. How much risk are you willing to take? Are you willing to get the vaccine or not? I think all we can
sorry,
do.
Manu, can I interrupt for a moment? Because what did you mean that there would be a vaccine in 1 to 2 months?
The CDC announced a couple of weeks ago that all the states should get ready to distribute a vaccine to essential health workers at the end of October or beginning of November.
Well, that's the infrastructure put in place. But Robert Redfield, the director of the CDC today in Washington, was speaking before the House and said that he doesn't believe it'll be here until the middle of next year.
Okay, I hadn't heard that update.
So I think we're looking at just, really getting everybody flu shots and being on board with masking until we can get pretty much 700 million shots into place. And that's after the vaccine's actually been approved, which has not happened yet. So, so I'm looking long term. I'm looking at 2022 and everything else, and I want to feel a little bit less exposed in our community. And I just wondered how your thoughts were on moving forward.
I think the primary thing we can do there is public education. We don't have a whole lot of other options. So a good public education campaign around the importance of getting a flu shot, particularly in the time of COVID, is really the best thing that we can do.
Yeah, I agree. And make a sexy, fun kind of Santa Cruz campaign. Yeah,
that's right. And make it really easy, right? Lower the barriers as much as possible. Drive-by flu vaccine or whatever makes sense with the health, and we'll get people to do it.
Great.
Other questions? Michael, I know you've got some. I know you've got plenty stored up.
Yeah, definitely got a lot of questions. All right, well, why don't I ask one? One thing I'm really interested in is the prospect of open data sharing, wherein we can leverage the power of, for example, UCSC to understand more about society by sharing like public data with universities to collaborate on research projects. Perhaps Santa Cruz could become a case study of sorts for, sharing a lot of different types of municipal data, perhaps in a central dashboard to advance human understanding of how a city or a coastal city works, especially as we're seeing, sea level rise and these fires. Like, it would just be really interesting to have like a bank of data that, we could make accessible to researchers to understand more about how we live and what the city kind of is by the numbers.
Yeah, that's a great point, Michael, is that the data is really fundamental to improving any system. And if you look at models of open governance, I think actually it was Christina that shared this document with me. Step one is to make sure that we're making public data available to everyone, that we're transparent. So that's really a good place to start for everything from fire preparedness to how long it's taking people to get permits, how many permits are issued after the second round, how many permits people are issuing. You name it, we should be, one of my first jobs as your county supervisor is going to be to make sure that every department has some key metrics that they are making public, and that, core data from their department is public. Because it can help a lot of things. I mean, even for example, a request for road repair. Right now, it's all many to one. If you make a request for a pothole fix on your road, goes to the Department of Public Works. They say thanks, but your neighbors can't see it. No one in your community can see it, so maybe they'll make the same request, or they won't know that they could, upvote it, for lack of a better word, or maybe even help out with it. Right? The county can then, we're really going to need to design programs to crowdsource more help. We have 600 miles of roads in this county. You could go all the way from here to the Canadian border with 600 miles. We need more people helping out on roads. We need a training program for volunteers so that we can put people on county insurance when they're out there fixing roads, so that they're insured. And it all starts with making the data open and transparent.
Awesome. I think I might have also seen Craig Vachon enter the Zoom meeting. If that is Craig, or if I'm referring to the right one. Craig is a part of Supply Shift, which is another super innovative Santa Cruz company. And it would be really cool, Craig, if you're plugged in right now, if you could pitch that real quick.
Sure. Supply Shift is a company that's focused on providing visibility and resiliency and to understanding the supply chain risk and supply chain of not just your suppliers, but your suppliers. And in doing so, it allows us to sort of share amongst the suppliers anonymously, thereby giving all of the suppliers the opportunity to know where they stand amongst the suppliers. And as each one decides they're going to improve upon the various ESG and sustainability metrics, all boats rise in the tide, right? You can't just have one group decide to move forward on greenhouse gas emissions without everyone else worrying about them falling behind. And so, really innovative company, going to have an enormous impact on the planet, and I'm really excited to it's part of Santa Cruz.
Thanks for sharing, Craig. Supply Shift's super exciting company, and thank you so much for sharing and coming to the event.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, you mentioned that there were 5 priorities that the voters have voiced. And if I got it right, one of them is high-paying jobs and one of them is housing. Mm-hmm. Could you list what the 5 are again, please? And if you haven't already commented on all 5 of them, if you would, please.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Let me, I'll just share so you guys can see as well. Here they are. So housing and development was one. We've talked about that. Happy to talk more about it. Education and tech equity. We talked a little bit about education, but really what we need to extend greater internet connectivity to more parts of the county, and that's with all the students needing to take courses from home right now. I think that's really a core thing that people are talking about there. I believe something like 13% of our community still doesn't have internet access at home. It's as high as 20% in some parts of the community. So, what I can do here as your county supervisor is make sure that, anytime, really make good on the build once or dig once policy. Every time we're doing road work, whether from a resurfacing to a bike lane, if we're opening up the street, we're putting in conduit to get more fiber internet to more parts of the county. Homelessness, we talked about. The cost of rent, I think also is related to housing and development and high-paying jobs. Police reform, I think this really ties into this homelessness model that I was talking about. If we're going to, in the place where we find the funding, for example, for strategy 1 of having a mobile health crisis unit, is to restructure some of the public safety budget. It doesn't have to, I don't want to defund and destabilize the police, but for example, the county sheriff has a $90 million budget, and they probably spend 70% of their time addressing homelessness and addiction issues in our community. So let's again, minimum viable product, let's do a test. Let's take somewhere between 1% and 5% of the existing safety budget, try a pilot program with the mobile health crisis unit. We would have Santa Cruz Police and other city police departments voluntarily pay into that as well. And so I think that begins to shift some of our safety budget more to preventative actions rather than purely dealing with the crisis over and over again in the same way every day. Help for immigrants and Spanish-only speakers, and COVID rules are the last 2. Does Do you have any more? Do you want me to fill out any of those responses or speak more to any of those top issues?
Yes, I am interested in the Spanish only speaker issue.
Mm-hmm.
And your ideas are great. I'm delighted. I haven't learned about you about 48 hours ago, and you're right on. So just share, if you would, please, what you think we can do with that with the Spanish and immigrant issues. What that's not being done. Thanks.
Yeah, well, certainly making sure that county services are available in Spanish, and that I'm committed to hiring a diverse staff myself in the first district. I get to hire 2 full-time analysts, or many people split one of those positions, so to make for 3 hires. Definitely committed to making sure we have folks on the staff that can work directly with people who only speak Spanish. Having also spoken with many folks in the Latino community, I know they just feel not seen and not cared about. Many of them have been here for many years, but they don't own their homes, right? Latino home ownership is only like 12% in general in the county, compared to the rest of the population, which is primarily white, is I believe closer to 60%. So that's why I think it's really important to create new housing options that allow immigrant communities or the Spanish-speaking population or portion of our community to become ownership members as well. I think the biggest difference between rich and poor, the biggest divide today, is home ownership, and I'm committed to making sure that more of the Latino population can become owners and members of our community that way as well.
Manu, I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
I like how you're receptive to changes in the economy, whether it be putting a focus on micromobility due to the rise of Jump Bike and Lime and Bird. But let's think about Airbnb, which is the biggest hotel in the world. So a lot of people are interested in adding ADUs to their homes to supplement their income. It also creates housing, right? To have extra units on certain properties. And we're seeing a trend towards it, especially over in the Bay Area, in San Jose and Santa Clara County. A lot of ADUs are getting built, and the process for that is getting more streamlined. Are you interested in that as a way to potentially open up more housing options for people to build these units in their backyard and then, supplement their income with rent from them?
Absolutely, yeah. ADUs are a huge part of the solution. And if you ask folks in our county today, they would say, "Oh yeah, of course we're streamlining ADUs," but all the challenges with the planning department are preventing that. I have a friend who's an architect who is trying to help a client build an ADU in Aptos, and it's taken 1.5 years because they've gotten held up on a septic issue, and there's just not enough coordination between departments in the county today. So all the work we do streamlining will help ADUs. I would go a step further for things like ADUs because San Diego, for example, has a library of pre-approved designs. You can just go in and say, like, yeah, that one looks good. Okay, great. We know what the construction is entailed there. You can have a permit the same day. And I think tiny homes kind of fit into that category a little bit too. You could even have, in some cases, a sort of incremental home ownership model. Well, someone could buy their own tiny home on wheels, move it onto an ADU type site on someone else's property, pay rent for the site, own their tiny home, and then that's ultimately going to help people bridge that gap today into home ownership. So yeah, I'm committed to also looking at, well, can you have more than one ADU on a property if it's maybe dependent on the square footage of the lot. So yeah, those kind of housing opportunities are key.
Mm-hmm. And Craig raised another point in the chat, whether he wants to elaborate on it, but talking about South County residents, Craig posted on his LinkedIn about a photo of some young 6-year-olds or 7-year-olds in Watsonville sitting outside a Taco Bell for Wi-Fi to do online school. Could we talk about South County residents?
Certainly. as I mentioned, my parents live in Corlitos. I grew up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and actually Watsonville was where we would go when we went to town when I was a kid. I have fond memories of the Fox Theater in downtown Watsonville. And since you mentioned the rail corridor, I mean, talk about a great opportunity to run fiber straight through the middle of our county and make sure that folks in South County have really good fast internet. Yeah, we can bring that right into town. We should be bring higher speed internet to Watsonville Plaza and more homes, and I think ultimately that could make Watsonville a more vibrant community as well. And I was on the board of Digital Nest and have worked a lot with those students, and really excited about Jacob's efforts. Well, it's 7:29. I think we were going to go to 7:30. So if there's any burning last questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, how can we help?
Great question. Well, here we've got just as of yesterday, it's 7 weeks to the election, and so everyone's going to get their ballots in just a few weeks at the beginning of October. So really just getting the word out as fast as possible is key. I mean, I think you mentioned yourself that you just learned about me 48 hours ago. So there's still a lot of people that need to understand who I am, why this election is important, and nothing is more valuable than a personal recommendation, or just the fact, you telling somebody else. So go tell 5 of your friends about what you heard tonight and why this election is important. You can follow the campaign page on Facebook. We're posting 3 to 5 times a day. It's at Manu for Supervisor, and also on Instagram at Manu for Supervisor. Donations are also always welcome. We have another $10,000 or so to raise to fully execute our campaign plan. If you live in the 1st District and want a yard sign, you can request one of those through the website. Here, I'm just going to put this stuff on the screen so you guys have it there as well. Endorsements are always helpful.
Can we donate on your website? Can we send in a donation on your website?
Yeah, you can donate, you can volunteer, you can request a yard sign. If you want to help walk precincts here at in the next few weeks, that's always much appreciated.
Manu?
Yes, Christina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina. I'm Manu's campaign coordinator, and I just wanted to also offer, if anyone's interested in doing something similar to this, an online meet and greet, please just send us an email at that email address, and I will respond and work something out. Thanks.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
I just want to add
you.
that the reason that I know about you is that one of your volunteers dropped one of your pamphlets on my car windshield. Or I've seen your signs everywhere, and they're great, but getting the word out is really helpful. So I will definitely be telling my friends.
That's fantastic. I will let our volunteers know that they've been reaching people and that it got you here tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Manu. You have some really futuristic ideas, and you make us all excited about the future of our city. Thanks for jumping into the fray of politics. Seriously, it's awesome.
My pleasure. Yeah,
Thanks.
Thank you, Michael and Doug, for bringing us together tonight. Nice to see all of you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Don't forget to vote.
Thank you.